Going by the recent statements made by the Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, many Kenyans are asking, does Uganda want war with Kenya? He mentioned that in the future there could be war if Uganda is not guaranteed, I think, territorial ownership of Indian Ocean. But I do not really understand. He argued from which perspective? First of all, listen to him.
So you people, why don't you see how to unite? Because Uganda, even if you wanted to build a navy, how can you build it? We don't have access to the sea. The political organization in Africa is so irrational. Some of the countries have no access to the sea. For economic purposes, but also for defense purposes, you are stuck. How do I export my products? That's why we have got endless discussion with Kenya, then this one stops, then another one comes, then the railway, the pipeline, the what, we discuss. But that ocean belongs to me. Because where is my ocean? I am entitled to that ocean. In future we are going to have wars. In the future we are going to have wars. How can you say that you are in a block of flats, that the compound belongs to only the flats on the ground floor, that the compound belongs to the whole block. All the flats are entitled to the compound.
Yeah.
There's no way you can say. So may I just watch these people? You are really endangering yourself. How can you have a situation like this? Uganda is landlocked inside here. But where is my ocean? My ocean is the Indian Ocean. So, no, it belongs, really, me. I'm on the top floor of the block. And then you say the compound belongs only the ones on the ground floor. This is madness.
What does the law say? When you read the law on the sea, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, you'd realize that coastal states like Kenya is a coastal state because Kenya has a coastline. So that makes Kenya a coastal state. Under that law, Kenya has sovereign rights over the sea. That's the Indian Ocean. Kenya also has the right over continental shelf. Let me explain what continental shelf here means. You see, now I want you to picture if you're at the beach, before you get into the deep sea or ocean, there's that land, that slope that goes up to deep ocean or sea. It's called continental shelf. So Kenya has the ownership of continental shelf. That means Kenya owns the seabed and subsoil. So meaning if there's any natural resource on Kenya's continental shelf, Kenya can exploit. Also, Kenya enjoys what is called exclusive economic zones. When it comes to sovereignty over territorial sea, the law on the sea allows Kenya to own 12 nautical miles, and when you convert that into kilometers, you get 22.2 kilometers. Now, I want you to picture it this way. Right from Nyali Beach, 12.2 kilometers, it is Kenya's territorial sea. So Kenya owns that sea. So there's no any other country that can claim ownership of that sea or ocean. And also when it comes to exclusive economic zones, Kenya owns 200 nautical miles. That's a lot of kilometers. Remember this, I said 12 nautical miles. If you convert into kilometers, you'll get 22.2 kilometers. Now imagine if it is 200 nautical miles. Do that math. So as much as Museveni claims that Uganda should have ownership of the ocean, based on what the law says, Uganda doesn't have any right to claim ownership of any coastline because it is a non-coastal state. Instead, what Uganda should do is ensuring that Tanzania and Kenya and any other country that has a coastline, they have cooperation, that they agree to work together, maintain peace. When there is that multilateral or bilateral cooperation, then it becomes easy for Uganda to continue its trade without claiming ownership of the sea, which legally they don't have that right to make such a claim. Now, look at it this way. Where is Uganda? Uganda is far, far, far much away from Indian Ocean. Even though Museveni used, the analogy of a block where even those on the top floor should still claim the land on the ground floor, which makes sense, but this is different. There is an international law. There is a United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea that gives Kenya sovereignty to own Indian Ocean. So for Uganda to make such a claim and even talk about war, that is just provocative. But as I mentioned, on the principle, Uganda is right to ask for access to the sea or to use the ports. And that's why I said that Uganda and Kenya must make sure that there's cooperation, there's peace. Because once Kenya's peace is disrupted, Uganda will not be able to use the Indian Ocean. But when it comes to ownership, Uganda can't make any ownership claim on Kenya's territorial sea. As I mentioned, that remains provocative, and I don't see if it makes sense for Uganda to continue even threatening Kenya instead of seeking more cooperation with Kenya. I've seen Museveni's son saying that they can fight Kenya and quickly get ownership of Indian Ocean. Let me hope he was making a joke, because the reality is Kenya's ownership of territorial sea is protected by United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and international laws. I also don't want to talk about Kenya's strength militarily. I don't want to talk about that. But geopolitically, I know Kenya is well positioned. But I also understand that Kenya is strong enough to protect its territory. And I am certain that Kenya can't allow itself to be provoked to a level of going into war with Uganda. Uganda still remains our neighbor. So Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and other East African countries should just ensure that there is cooperation and protect democracy so that elections do not disrupt peace like what we saw in Tanzania. What do you think about Museveni's threat that in the future they may go to war just to claim ownership of the sea or ocean?